Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down a Fox News segment that imagines what a hypothetical second Trump term would look like after its first year. They paint a picture of 2025 as a year of big wins. Now, our job here isn't to get into the politics, but to really understand the narrative, how they build this story of success, step by step. Right out of the gate, the source hits us with this quote, "moving at warp speed." This isn't just a throwaway line, it's the theme for the entire segment. It sets the stage for a year defined by incredibly fast, decisive action. Okay, so here's the roadmap for how they build their argument. They start with that big warp speed idea, then they dive into the big ticket items, the economy and national security. But what's really interesting is they then tackle a potential problem, the polling numbers, before looking forward. So let's get into it. So everything, and I mean everything, is built on this foundation of warp speed. The goal here seems to be to create a sense of massive momentum right from the start. That way, every point they make after this just feels like another result of that incredible pace. From that big, flashy idea, they immediately pivot to what they call the number one issue for voters, the economy. The thinking here seems to be, if we can prove we've succeeded on the economy, everything else will fall into place. And how do they start talking about the economy? With this super bold, very direct statement. There's no gray area here. They're basically saying you can ignore all the chatter and just look at what they present as cold, hard facts. Okay, so you can't just say the economy is strong. You've got to back it up, right? So here's their evidence. They kick it off with a 21% jump in the Nasdaq, framing it as real money in the retirement accounts of over 160 million Americans. And they don't stop there. Next stop is another big one, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which they report is up 13%. It's another piece of data meant to build this picture of widespread economic health. And just to round it all out, to really paint a complete picture, they also mention that the S&P is up for the year. By hitting all three of these major indexes, the source is really trying to create this image of a stock market that's booming across the board. Now, this next part on inflation is really interesting in how they frame it. They bring in an economist who slices up all the inflation since 2020 and basically assigns the vast majority of it to the previous administration. This lets them position the current situation not as a problem, but as a massive cleanup operation. All right, so once they've made their case for a strong economy, the story shifts to their second big pillar, security. And they tackle this on two fronts, at the nation's borders and on its streets. And what they do here is link these two things, the border and crime, together, presenting them as two sides of the same coin of success. The message is that there's been a decisive shift in how the federal government is handling both. When it comes to the border, they point to this one very specific number. They claim that for 7 straight months, 0 illegal aliens were released into the country. They present this as a clear-cut victory, directly tied to the new administration's policies. And then you get this classic phrase, "We've got a new sheriff in town." It's simple, it's memorable, and it's a really effective way to bridge the gap from the specific issue with the border to a much broader, tougher approach to crime in general. So what's the proof that this new sheriff approach is actually working? Well, they offer up a pretty powerful statistic, the claim that the murder rate is on track for the biggest single-year drop in recorded history. So who gets the credit for all this? According to the source, it's all about new leadership. They specifically name-drop Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel, and even claim that FBI agents on the street are very happy to be focusing on what they call real crime again. Okay, so they've just laid out this whole case for major wins on the economy and security, but there's a problem, a potential contradiction that they have to address. Why aren't the president's approval ratings reflecting all these successes? And you see the host of the segment ask this exact question. It's a real turning point in the conversation. If everything is going so well, why don't people seem to think so? Why isn't it showing up in the polls? And here's the answer they give. They argue that the administration took over a country that was, in their words, on the brink. The idea is that these big policy changes are working, but it just takes time for the average person to actually feel the positive effects in their daily life. And to back up that it just takes time theory, they lay out these 4 massive priorities they say the administration had to juggle all at once. The subtle argument here is that the public might just be overwhelmed by the sheer speed and scale of all this change, and they just haven't caught up yet. So to wrap it all up, the conversation shifts from look at what we did in 2025 to here's what's coming in 2026, and they really anchor their predictions in upcoming economic policies. And the big thing they're looking forward to is this massive tax bill. The proposals are pretty straightforward: make current tax cuts permanent and get rid of federal taxes on tips and overtime. But here's the kicker. They say the bill would be retroactive to the beginning of 2025, which would mean a pretty immediate cash infusion for a lot of people. And it's not just them saying the economy is heading in the right direction. To add some weight to their predictions, they bring in a forecast from Goldman Sachs. This projection of 2.6% real GDP growth is used as a kind of third-party validation that things are on the right track. They also throw in one more piece of evidence to show that these economic gains are reaching regular people. The claim is that wages have gone up every single month during the administration's first year in office. And the whole segment ends on this one quote, which really ties everything together perfectly. It brings us right back to that initial warp speed theme and offers one final reason for that gap between the wins they've listed and the public's perception. It leaves you with a really interesting question. Is it possible for change to happen so fast that people can't even keep up?